So you worked for a company called Sea Canoe in Phuket.
That's right.
And there was a controversy there. Let's just say an assassination attempt.
Ban, who was the operations manager, has been shot. What are you talking about? So he's been shot outside the office, on the front door of the office.
Hey folks, Pete here from Thairish Times. We're back in Bangkok now, and boy do I have a good interview for you today. I'm really excited about sharing this one with you. Let me explain. So this is the story of Noah, who's been in Thailand since the early 90s, and he was involved in an ecotourism company in Phuket in the 90s. This company was made up of a lot of foreigners at the time, and they offered a really exclusive tour of the islands off Phuket. And it's like anything in life, folks. If you have a good thing going for you, someone out there is going to be watching, and they're either going to copy you or imitate you in some way. And that's kind of what happened here. There was a controversy that arose between Thai competitors, a company that held the monopoly on birds' nests in caves in Thailand. Now, if you don't know what that means, Noah's going to explain later on in the interview what birds' nests are and that kind of business, because that's a big business in Thailand. There's a lot of money in that. And there was also a controversy arose between the national park service. So, you know, foreigners pay 200 baht when you go into a national park. So all of these things were in the mix, and it led to a man being shot. There's an interesting article that I read about this, and I'm going to link it in the description below. If you want to sit down and get yourself a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, it's about a 20-minute read, but it's a really interesting article that basically made me really want to do this interview when I read the article. Usually when I do an interview, I keep it to a half an hour, but this time we went through some really good stuff here. So I actually made 2 parts to this, actually 3 parts to this. Part 1 is going to be this interview. Part 2 is going to be a tour of Noah's house. He's got a beautiful house. In fact, he has 2 houses. He bought a house and then he bought a plot of land and built another house on the land. So he has 2 beautiful houses. So we're going to show you those in part 2. And then in part 3, it's going to be another interview, how Noah got Thai citizenship, and also a really, really interesting story of the early 2000s in Thailand, how Noah saw an opportunity to combine tourism and the internet to basically give him a first mover advantage, especially in Laos and also Thailand, which is really crazy to think about it. You know, the combining tourism and internet, isn't that just a given? Well, 20 years ago, the internet was in its infancy, and yeah, it wasn't a given. Some people saw the opportunity in it, and good for them. So we're going to talk about that as well. So anyway, if you enjoyed this interview, please like, subscribe as well, because we have more. This is a 3-parter coming up with Noah. So thank you very much. Hope you enjoy it, and give me a like, leave me a comment. Let's get into it. Noah, thank you very much for doing this.
Pleasure.
We're going to have a good story today.
Let's see.
So Noah, tell us, I always start off with the same question, but I always think it's nice and easy. Where are you from and what brought you to Thailand?
I'm from South Wales. So I lived all my life until I was at university in London, but I lived all of my life until I was 34 in South Wales. I worked in the family business. The family business was in glass and windows. It was a 4th generation business, and I was the 4th generation. And a friend of mine from, well, before school, when we were tiny babies, we were walked in pushchairs down the street. My mother and his mother used to go shopping together. We were tiny babies, we were pushed in pushchairs up the street, and I've known this guy Simon Warren, sadly not with us anymore. I've known him since as long as I can remember. Simon moved to Thailand. he went off to do the whole backpack thing, Koh Phangan, hung out. Eventually, he ended up meeting some people and started up a kayak company. He met a guy called John Gray, who'd come over from Hawaii and was exploring Phang Nga Bay in South Thailand. And Simon joined him, and they started up a kayak business with some local partners. And I was traveling to Asia for the business, and I was buying glass. So I was going to see glass distributors, agents, factories in Hong Kong, in Singapore, in Malaysia. And one of the trips that I did, I went to see Simon. And it was amazing. They were doing this, they were taking customers out on kayaks into Phang Nga Bay, and I don't know if you've been there, but it's an absolutely stunning environment. Marine National Park, limestone casts sticking out of the ground, sticking out of the water hundreds of feet high, covered in tropical jungle. I mean, white-bellied sea eagle, crab-eating macaques, monitor lizards, nature. It's absolutely wonderful. And I went to see them, and they were doing this thing, and they, wow, this is pretty cool. So I went back to the UK and carried on doing what I was doing. About a year later, Simon was on a trip back to the UK. And he said, well, we've started this business, as you know, and we really need to have someone to help manage the business, because we don't know anything about running a business. We know about kayaking and we know about doing what we're doing. We don't know anything about running a business. Can you join us? And I was like, are you serious? I mean, I've got a job in the family business. I'm kind of doing okay here. Let me think about it. So then I had another trip out there. And I met the guys, and they said, please, we'd really like you to come and join us. So I did. And that was pretty much it. I mean, I don't know, and I'm still to this day haven't worked out the absolute reason why I left doing what I was doing.
What year are we talking
about?
Oh,
we're talking now, I left in 93. So I first went to see them probably about 89, 90. Would have been 1990. So by 1993, I finally decided, my wife and young daughter, we decided to come to Thailand and give up everything that we were doing. It was some kind of calling of, you know, you have to do something different.
Yeah, I know.
I've been there for I've been
same.
doing it for 10 years. I was working in the family business. That wasn't the easiest thing in the world. We just decided we wanted a complete break, something completely new. And that's how we ended up here.
So you worked for a company called Sea Canoe in Phuket.
That's right.
And there was a controversy there. There was, let's just say, an assassination attempt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell us that story?
We were running an ecotourism business. There was local ownership. It was about preserving the environment. It was about taking people out to see something that they would not normally see, with minimal impact to the environment. So out in Phang Nga Bay, they have these caves in the limestone casts. They call them hongs. The limestone cast's been there for 75 million years or something like that. And you can take small kayaks and small boats into these caves when the tide is right, and go into the caves, and some of these caves open up into a lagoon in the middle of this rock. And it truly is quite amazing. And when I joined the company, we were taking no more than 16 people a day into the hongs. And we were charging then $100 a day to do this, and it was a great experience. We gave them a full Thai seafood buffet on board the escort boat. We had cooks on board. It was a huge spread. It was, you got the value just for the meal. And people used to say this is the best meal we've had since coming to Thailand. So it was a high end tour. We were the only people doing it. And then one day, someone decided to copy us. So you've probably noticed that in this part of the world, copying is a kind of form of flattery, but it's also an annoying form of flattery because someone copies exactly what you're doing, even a similar name to what you're doing, and they'll think there's nothing wrong with that. So, where I'm from, you can't copy someone else's work. That's wrong. Another company started up, and then another company started up. And then within about 4 or 5 years, we'd gone to taking 16 people in the caves to, there might have been hundreds. And some of the operators were taking a big boat out there. They'd take people out by longtail, and they'd ferry people in and out of these caves all day long. Might have been hundreds of people in the bay at any one time. We were waving the flag of, we know we can't do this, we have to preserve the environment, we can't be taking all these people out here, this is ruining the experience. Meanwhile, our company had done extremely well as being the poster boy for ecotourism, not just in Thailand but in Southeast Asia. We'd built the business. We had operations in Samui, in Krabi. We'd started operation in the Philippines. We were working in Vietnam. We were also working in Fiji. We'd won awards for tourism. We won the British Airways Tourism for Tomorrow Award, the American Society of Travel Agents Smithsonian Award. We were the Tourism Authority of Thailand Best Inbound Operator. So our name was out there. And there was also a degree of jealousy from the local Thai operators and from...
And this was a foreign-owned company?
It was a Thai-owned company because that was the structure.
Okay.
But there were lots of foreigners involved.
Okay.
So there were... When I joined the company, there were probably about half a dozen foreigners involved. By the time I left the company, there were 4 of us. But we were definitely the voice. So by the time we got to, I think, 1998, as I said, there may have been several hundred people a day going into the caves. And about that time, the Tourism Authority of Thailand started doing the 200 baht to go into a national park. So Phang Nga is a national park. We'd never paid anything to take people in there. They'd never asked any money to go in there. I think you might have had to have paid 20 baht if you went to James Bond Island or something like that. We'd never paid anything, we were never asked. The national park came out with, we want 200 baht a day per person to go in the park. Well, we agreed to that kind of reluctantly, but they're taking the money for the upkeep of the national park, for signage, for staff, for everything else like that. Okay, fine. Then there was a change in the company that held the monopoly for collecting birds' nests in the caves. And that was granted by the Thai government. And I believe it was a 5-year monopoly to collect from the caves, in certain caves down the Thai coastline.
Can you explain, for anyone who doesn't know,
Sure.
about these bird nests?
Yeah, birds' nests are, at the time, The bird's nest are swiftlets. They live in caves. They're farmed now. You can actually nowadays you see, especially if you're driving around the coastline, you'll see these buildings with no windows, but they're full of little holes. And they use these to farm the birds, and the birds will create nests using their saliva. And so you get this rather strange kind of teardrop-shaped bird's nest made of saliva that's collected from the caves. And these guys climb up there with bamboo in incredible heights in these caves in the limestone and collect these things. And then, 25 years ago or so, it was $1,000 a kilo for this stuff. So it's big money in these bird's nests. And the bird's nest company, the company that had the bird's nest concession, the new company, turned around and said, we can't have all these people in the caves. You are creating noise, you are disturbing the birds, you are disturbing their production of nests, and that's our income. So you have to give us some money. Okay, we kind of thought about this, and we said, well, actually, we're not going to give you any money because the national park are asking us for money, and they are the custodians of the national park, the forestry department, and you have a concession to collect birds' nests. You don't have a concession to charge people to go into the caves. So this kind of went on round and round, and the discussion went on, and eventually we said, no, we're not going to pay you any money. The other companies, of which there were probably about 15 kayak companies by then, had formed an association of which we were members. And they put up a case, but we had the Tourism Authority in Thailand on one side who were trying to negotiate. We had the bird's nest, we had the national parks, and we had the association. And eventually a deal was struck where everybody agreed to pay 100 baht to the bird's nest company to go in the caves. We refused. We said we want to pay the money to the national park, and we don't care how much the national park asks, we'll pay it. But we are standing up against what we saw as being extortion. A few weeks went on, and it got difficult. They put guards outside the caves in boats, and they allowed some of the companies in, and they didn't allow us in because we weren't paying them the 100 baht each. There was an argument out there between the guards and between some of our people. 2 days later, after that argument, I received a phone call at about 7 o'clock in the morning at home from the office. I lived about 20 minutes away. I lived down in Nai Han in the south of Phuket. And they said, Ban, who was the operations manager, has been shot. So what are you talking about? So he's been shot outside the office, on the front door of the office. And apparently a motorbike had turned up with 2 guys on it. One guy got off with a gun, took 3 shots at Ban, who was by then on the ground, having fallen down after receiving the first shot, and drove away. We rushed up. He was in hospital. He was in hospital for must have been 10, 12 hours or something like that in ICU, and thankfully recovered. But the problem was always there. It never really went away. That was the big black mark on that industry at that time. Because of that, I was there with my wife and daughter. My wife said, "Oh no, we got to get out of here." She went down to Penang to carry on some studies in education, and my daughter went down with her. And then I left together with three other foreigners who were in the country, in the company. We left. We said enough is enough. We can't hang around with this over our heads. No one knows who did it to this day. They never found the gunman. And the story kind of just went under the carpet, and that was that.
What happened to Sea Canoe company?
Carried on.
Carried on?
Carried on. It's still going today. Still going today. I mean, right now, obviously, it's, with COVID and everything and no customers, I mean, they're obviously struggling, but the company is still there. John, who started the company, went off and formed his own company, John Gray Sea Canoe. They're still there, and they must be they must be having a pretty tough time right now with no customers, but they are still there, yes.
So the article that I read, it portrayed John Gray to be, is John Gray, would he call him the CEO? Was he the CEO? What title did he have?
No, he never called himself the CEO. I can't remember what he called him.
Would it be fair to say he was the owner?
He was the founder. Founder was the word he used. Yeah,
all
absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So in the article that I read, John Gray was portrayed as being. It said basically that his personality, behaviour, and the decision making, it really infuriated his Thai competitors. And it sounds to me that it was a really hostile environment down there.
It was, and I'm not here to comment on individuals.
Okay.
But personalities did get in the way of progress for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll leave it at that because I don't want to get you in any trouble.
Well,
and it's a touchy subject.
No, it's a touchy subject, and if I can mention it, the laws on libel in this country are strange to those of us that come from the West. If you say something that is even true, that brings someone's name into disrepute, you can be sued.
Yeah.
And I've been a witness for the defence in a court of law in Thailand in a libel case. And it's not pleasant. And I would never want to be the defendant.
Every time I go to Phuket, I always find it's incredibly expensive, especially when it comes to taxis.
Mm-hmm.
I know at the moment there's a big dispute between Bolt, the taxi company, the app where you can order a taxi, and versus the taxi men. You could be paying, if you go to a taxi rank, you could pay 600 baht for a 10-minute trip,
mm-hmm.
but the Bolt driver would do it for 100 baht.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say the taxi drivers in Phuket are not too happy with Bolt. So I always got the impression that Phuket was very heavily ran by the mafia. Is there any truth in that?
Mafia is a strong word. They're fiercely independent down there. They're southern Thais, they're Phuket Thais. They've got their own thing. They don't like to be told what to do by Bangkok or by anyone else. And in that respect, they run their own show. And that runs through just about everything. The example that you talked about the taxi mafia, if you like, I concur. I mean, it's nonsense. The amount that you're asked to get into a tuk-tuk to go from one beach to the other. It's ridiculous. I mean, I remember when it used to be 20 baht to go from one beach to the other. And sometime in the mid-90s, it just changed. You know, from overnight, it went from 20, a bit like the entry to the national parks. Maybe it was at the same time as that. But I mean, it used to be 20 baht, then it was 200 baht. And non-negotiable. So the story you say about Bolt being cheaper than the taxi mafia in Phuket is one thing. In Bangkok, it's the other way around. Grab is more expensive than the taxis in Bangkok. No one can complain about Grab because people are actually paying more for it. You know, Phuket, yeah, I get it. I mean, taxis in Phuket, the tuk-tuks there, they used to stop people coming into hotels to pick up customers. I mean, at one time I remember, they didn't want us to send in our van to pick up our paying customers to go on our trip. They said, no, you can't take the people in an aircon van that you're paying for. They need to go in our open air tuk-tuk, Daihatsu tuk-tuk. Like, hang on a minute. That makes no sense.
And did they get what they want?
No, of course not.
No?
No, of course not. Of course not. But I mean, the taxi is the taxi mafia, and I will call it a mafia, is one of the worst things about Phuket. You go on holiday there. Why are you paying $20 to go from one beach to the next? I mean, why are you paying 1,500 baht to go to the airport when it should be 500? It's ridiculous.
I don't think that it'll ever change either. I think that's deep in how you do business in Phuket.
They've tried a lot, and they've never managed to crack that one. And I hope that as we come out of COVID and get back into tourism, that there will be some rules and guidelines laid down. It's a funny thing, Pete. You know, the one of the nice things about this country is that I like the quirkiness of this country, and that whole kind of mafia tuk-tuk thing kind of goes with the quirkiness in a funny sort of way. I mean, it's no Singapore.
Yeah.
You know, you got to take the rough with the smooth to some respect. But no, I don't like. Every time I go down to Phuket, I rent a car. Well, I'm not going in those stupid tuk-tuks.
So now, besides the Sea Canoe controversy, what else were you doing down in Phuket?
While I was working there, I spent some time lecturing at the Princess Songkla University School of Hotel and Tourism Management. That was fun. It was really nice to work with students it was a vocational course. I mean, they're into tourism, so they were really into learning about tourism. And I taught man and the environment. I have a degree in environmental science. So I taught man and the environment. I designed my own course and based that around tourism, specifically tourism in Phuket, and that was fun. I designed an online course for them. We didn't have online then. It was they had a server in the university when they all sat there in one great big room, about 40 people, chatting around the world. So I thought, hang on a minute, we've got them tied to terminals. Let's put my course on the server, and that was kind of the start of me getting interested in internet and HTML and all that kind of stuff. Before I went to Thailand, I had an account, an email account, a login via Cardiff University, and had an email account. And this was fairly useless in those days. But I saw the potential of it. And got to Phuket and there was absolutely nothing. I mean, people that I'd known who'd been there years before, they used to have to go to They used to have to go to the post office, book a time to make a phone call, because landlines were 25,000 baht to get one in your home. I mean, it was ridiculous. That's not a mafia thing. That's just, well, maybe it is a mafia thing. But you know, communication was difficult. So I had a CompuServe account, used to dial up Bangkok. That was really expensive in those days on a landline. Then a company called Phuket Computer Services set up a bulletin board. And the bulletin board patched into a Bangkok bulletin board. And we used to send email and via this bulletin board. And that was great. And then one day, Lox Info came down to Phuket to do a presentation on how to get onto the internet. So we all rushed there, and we rushed there with piles of documents. We had passports, we had company registration forms, we had everything, because we wanted to sign up for the internet. We had to sit through 3 hours worth of Lox Info saying, and now we're going to show you all about the World Wide Web. So we watched this, yeah, we know all this. And now we're going to show you email. Yes, we know all this. Where do we sign? So we signed up, and that was it. That was the big change, and that was really what really took the company off in terms of getting international bookings. We were the first company to have an email account. A website. Quite a comprehensive website. I discovered autoresponders in the early days, which was great because people were saying, "Well, this company, they responded immediately." It was, you know, yeah, we didn't do anything at all. It just sent back an email to them saying, "Thank you very much for your inquiry. Click this, click that, click the other." But no, we did really well with we did really well online in the mid-90s. The demographic of our customers that were coming for these eco tours were exactly the same as the people that had internet accounts in America and Europe at the time. So we were able to get these people by doing this kind of, you know, hybrid marketing. We'd go for classified ads in newspapers and magazines. Just said, come and experience the nature of South Thailand, and put a website address. And people said, well, what's that all about? Never mind. You know, we found the people because the people that understood it punched in the website and saw our website and booked with us. And we did really well and had first mover advantage in.
And then did your competitors literally copy your business model?
No, they could never go near that. And that was part of the jealousy thing in a funny sort of way, because if you're from the West and you're marketing to the West, it's kind of easier. If you're Thai and you're marketing to the West and you don't understand that Western mindset, it's a lot harder. So we were pulling in these people, and we were charging them $166 a night to share a tent on a beach in the middle of nowhere. And the 5-star hotels weren't charging that much for a room in those days. They said, people are going out on your tour, they're leaving our hotel, they're going out on your tour, they're paying more to you than they are to us. It doesn't make sense. It makes complete sense to us, because we're giving them this experience that they wouldn't have otherwise. They can't find some tiny remote island in the middle of South Thailand, a kayak around it, have a beach barbecue on a remote beach in the middle of nowhere. It's not going to happen. They can't get that. So we charged accordingly. But Phuket was a hive at the end of the 1990s. Phuket was a hive of internet activity. The online travel agent business, the hotel business, booking online, I say started in Phuket. It was much bigger there than anywhere else in the world, as far as I know. Planet Holiday were there, they became Agoda. Hotel Travel, which was a spin-off of Planet Holiday, they were there as well. There were a bunch of people that came out of Princess Songkhla University that I'd worked with as students that started off their own travel businesses online. And there was Phuket.com that I eventually joined when I left Sea Canoe. And you know, all these guys went on to bigger and better things.
Right, I don't normally do this when I do an interview. Usually I try and keep it to half an hour, but I think I've only covered half the material here. I want to keep this going. So what I'm going to do is we're going to make this a part 1 and a part 2.
Is it of interest to you?
Yeah, this is really good stuff.
Okay.
So I want to do a part 2 because I suppose we can call this part the Phuket segment, and then this is off the cuff. I'm just going to do a part 2. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to end this video. I'm going to shake your hand and say, Noah, thank you very much. Subscribe to the channel because we have a part 2 coming, and I know what's coming because I have the questions ready. So that's it for the end of this one. Check out part 2 for the next segment.